Welcome to the Church Solutions Podcast, brought to you by JSL Solutions. The Church Solutions Podcast is designed to help equip you and your church in the use of technology and other tools and services. And now, here are your hosts, Steve Lacey and Phil Thompson.
It's another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast.
Hi, my name is Steve Lacey.
And I'm Phil Thompson. See, if we stream this, which maybe we will someday, you could see all the behind-the-scenes smirks and smiles. And
yeah, we used to stream it, and now we become podcast only.
I know. We need to get back to what we do because we're a streaming company, right?
That's right.
StreamingChurch.tv is one of our products. What else do we have?
We have myflock.com, Church App Live, so some church management, website management, and mobile app stuff.
We do.
We do. So what is on the agenda for today?
Well, as if you're a regular listener to this podcast, which I think you are, Steve, you know that we talk a lot of times about tech stuff, but we also talk about things related to church work and ministries, leadership and helping volunteers and all that. And this is kind of a combination of what we're going to talk about, because we're going to talk about 10 common multimedia presentation mistakes.
Yes, and this can apply, typically applies for the church service, but it can apply
anything.
I know I've made these mistakes outside of the church service.
We should hear some of those stories.
I will. We'll get into all this.
Yeah. So, today, look, and it's no secret that I'm old, and I've been doing stuff, speaking in front of people now for many, many years. And back in the old days, when I would get up and speak to people, like at a church service, I might have some notes, and that was it, and maybe a microphone, and that was the extent of my multimedia production, or my presentation, I should say. But today, there's all sorts of tools available.
Right, and the experience, I think, is a lot better, but the potential for disaster has gone up quite a bit.
Exactly. And look, I know we have lots of listeners from all sorts of different backgrounds, and I'm sure there are some people listening, pastors or whatever, saying, I still just get up and I don't have any notes, and I just speak by the Spirit. And I would say, great, more power to you. I've always needed some notes, but today there are...
Well, I think it's really common to have overhead screens and projectors nowadays. So.
Yeah. Oh, and if you don't use them, you might consider using them, because they really do help your presentation. And we live in a different time now.
Yeah, it's not only just the sermon; it's also worship as well. So
music, worship, all sorts of stuff.
This would apply to all of that.
But we are used to seeing things. That's just the way it is. If you want to reach, generations, if you want to reach what's happening today with the crowds, you really should use some type of multimedia presentations, because it keeps people's attentions, and it's the way it is. It's 2017. So anyhow, so we're going to talk about common mistakes that happen, and we've got 10 of them here. Maybe we'll go even further. Who knows? So shall we start?
Sure.
All right. Here's number 1. Dun, 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 dun. Notification interrupt, or notification interruption. You know what that is, right?
I do.
It's because you read the notes.
Yes, I did read the notes. And that's basically when, and everyone, this is probably the most common as well.
I think so.
You got your presentation up there, and then all of a sudden it says, Larry wants to chat with you on Facebook, and it pops up in the middle of your presentation.
Yeah, so this would be if you plugged your computer in to, either some way with a projector or some type of presentation on the wall or screens.
Right. And
you had your computer plugged in, or maybe your iPad or something that's plugged in, and you got Facebook open, or you got Messenger open.
Even if it's not open.
What's that?
Even if they're not open, you'll get these notifications.
Yeah, you can. If you set it up in advance, you can get even your emails can pop up.
Right. Depends on what notifications you have enabled on your computer. They're going to show up in your presentation.
Right. So if you've got it plugged in and people are seeing your screen, they're going to see the notifications that you get, and it can be a little awkward depending on what they are. So obviously the answer to this is you want to make sure that you are turning these off in advance.
Yes, having all the notifications on your computer.
I've actually had this when I've been doing, we have a little tool, join.me, that we use to either people can look at my screen when I'm trying to help them with some technical support, or I can look at their screen if they want. But I've had people where I've been showing people things and I've had notifications pop up, and it's not anything weird. It's just I get an email from somebody or from you, yelling at me or something, and it gets a little weird on that. But other than that, so that happens. So that's the number one mistake, or one of the top 10, is notification interruptions happen. So fix that. Make sure you update your notifications where they don't pop up on your screen.
Right. So number 2 is I guess a tip to avoid this problem. Yeah. It's clear your desktop.
Clear your desktop. So if you've got your computer plugged into the projector or some way, some means.
You're running either worship software or something else.
Right. Maybe even your wallpaper. You might want to look at your wallpaper. Do you want everybody to see your wallpaper?
Right. What happens is your presentation software all of a sudden crashes, and everyone's looking at your desktop.
Right.
And so you've got
your icons, your pictures of small pictures.
When I was in the larger corporate world, I've had this happen. So I've got doing presentations, and sometimes it depends on what you have. It shows my desktop and shows my 4 kids all jumping in the air, but it's not quite on topic. But
yeah, well, and it could be just something just distracting. Sometimes I'll have a Jeep or something on mine. It's
and a bunch of different icons of different things.
Yeah.
So you want to.
So it gets distracting.
Create a very neutral desktop and clear the clutter.
Yep, absolutely. It adds to what you're doing here, and we'll get into why this is important in a moment. So the third one is.
So this is called "Oops, Did He Really Just Say That?"
And that would go.
This has to do with, as many people do in their teaching, is they'll have video illustrations,
movie clips.
So you'll be setting up a point, and you'll go through and you'll say, let's reinforce this point on jealousy with this recent movie with Tom Hanks, and so you've typically queued up the movie to the point that you want, and the problem you run into is you don't stop the clip on time, and it goes into the next scene where they're dropping F-bombs or whatever.
Yeah, that can be a little embarrassing. So the one thing, obviously besides making sure you know what your clip is all in advance, one of the things that we do at my church is we just take a clip and we make a file, an MP4 file out of it.
That has just the clip.
Just the clip.
The before and without the after.
It's edited, so, it runs, and then when it's done, it stops. There's nothing, it doesn't keep going on to the other parts of the movie.
Right.
Because it's a file that we've created, we've edited. And it's a very simple way to do this. You can do this actually very simply. I mean, you can even use something as primitive, I call it primitive, but as simple as Movie Maker. You can just go in there and make some edits. So so you definitely want to do that, and make sure the audio is good as well, and all that. So
right. So a good tip for doing that. So
in fact,
gone are the days of let's cue the DVD up to scene 12, and
which we used to do with your pastor Jeff Love and I. In fact, I've got a funny story where we had a scene. I don't know if I want to get into it. It's a little bit off color, but I mean, it was a scene with a woman. It opens up with a shot of a woman, and then it goes in a scene, and I don't remember why it's what it is, but it was one of those scenes where it focused on her chest, and for some reason, the guy that was running it, and they are still at your church. So we won't get on Tony's case about this. I think it was actually Mark, but and we had 2 or 3 services, and every service they just jumped the gun on it.
They miscued the movie clip,
and it wasn't a huge faux pas, but it was like you see this shot of this woman, and then it gets to where you want it to be. And again, that goes back to the days before it was actually edited with a file.
Right.
So you had to cue it up and. Who knows what happened? The software stumbled or something. I don't know. But anyhow, it was kind of a funny thing. And the funny part about it was it happened like at least twice. So, okay, you goofed it up the first time, but...
All right, so number 4 on our list.
All right, number 4 is print your slides.
And why would you want to do that?
Well, if you're running like a PowerPoint presentation or something and you've got a lot of slides in it, which I don't recommend a lot of slides because you can lose people and you can get confused yourself. But if you've got a lot of material, a lot of slides like PowerPoint or something, and somebody gets off track, the person running the presentation, or even if you have a little remote and you're running it yourself and you get ahead of yourself or get behind, or you get lost because you got so many slides that all of a sudden, where's it at, and you're flipping through slides and people are laughing at you.
No better way to mess up a presentation than just start having you fumble with the equipment or the software you're dealing with.
So if you've got, with PowerPoint and all these other ones, you can a lot of times print up the deals on paper. And then you can kind of, the way I would do things is I would have the paper in front of me and I would just mark off the slides with a pencil or something while I'm talking. And that's one way. But the bottom line here is you want to stay on track.
Or you show up for your presentation and the projector's not working that day.
That could be another issue.
And if you don't have the printouts there, you may really stumble through your presentation.
Yeah, you can wing it. If you've got the printouts, you can always wing it.
Right.
And even though people might not see a pretty slide or something that's, you can always wing it. But if you don't have anything, you're just looking at your own PowerPoint to kind of keep you on track, and then it goes down, it can be a little rough.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah, it can be a little rough. So let's move on. That was number 4.
All right, number 5, test your video.
Test your video. So we're talking about common multimedia mistakes that we make sometimes with presentations. So you definitely want to test the video, and this is important because if you're counting on a video and it doesn't work, it's just you can go on, you can move on a little bit, but it can kind of put a damper on your presentation. We have a thing, and many churches are doing this, called At the Movies, and we've talked about this here before, and that is, you have maybe 6 or 7 movie clips, and you're using these at the movies. You're using usually one movie, and you're taking points from the movie to highlight a message. And we've had issues where the whole thing just kind of crashed, and the clips would freeze up, and just a disaster. And of course, when you're doing at the movies and you're relying on these clips, you've crashed and burned. I mean, it's just there's not a lot you can do.
Yeah, the message is.
Yeah, I mean, you can talk, but there's nothing to illustrate your message, and kind of loses its pizzazz.
And I had an experience not too long ago at my son's wedding because we had made a video. My wife had worked on this for 9 months or so, and there's a few hundred people there, and it's time to cue the video up, and we'd given the guy that's doing all the DJ AV stuff, the video on a thumb drive, and it wouldn't play.
Oh boy!
So we had to go run and grab another computer and make it happen.
But you salvaged it.
We salvaged it, but he had not tested the video on his equipment prior to showtime. You
really need to test, and it just makes life so much easier. All right, so the 6th point here, as we continue to talk about the common faux pas here and common mistakes, is test. We talked about testing your video. Test everything that you do. Test it, and test it where you're comfortable with it. And because if you're doing something with a YouTube video or your internet's, maybe you're relying on internet for some reason, and the internet isn't fast enough. Or, you've got a computer, or you got somebody that, like in your case with your guy at the wedding, didn't really test the video, but you've got somebody that's not familiar with the machine, the Mac, or the PC. It can be a little awkward.
Right. So you want to go through in the environment that you're anticipating to present in and test there and kind of a dress rehearsal.
Absolutely, and make sure you're comfortable with it. Otherwise, don't do it or modify it. And for me, one of my biggest things in life, one of my biggest motivating points for me for anything I do, is not the drive to succeed so much as the fear of failure. And so when I get up and speak at my church, and I generally get up once a month, maybe give a message, maybe a little more. I want to make sure that I know what I'm talking about and everything I'm doing works. And yeah, there's always going to be mistakes and nobody's perfect and all that. But I want to make sure that I'm comfortable and I test everything that I do. And I test it again because I don't want to fail. And that's my own personal issue, I guess. But it makes for the presentation to go so much better.
Right.
And especially when you're dealing with people, if you're a church that really wants to reach new people, and you've got somebody that's relatively new or several new people in the crowd, and you're constantly having issues with everything you do, the regular people, that love you and care for you,
they may forgive you.
They'll forgive you. But the new people might be like, well, I don't know. I'm not sure I want to go to this church. I mean, it's a point to consider.
Can't drive PowerPoint properly.
These guys don't know how to run their projector or don't know how to run video or, look,
media shout keeps dying
Yeah, nobody's a perfection. I mean, I'm not a perfectionist anymore. I used to be, but I mean, nobody's perfect. But still, you want to do your best. That's all we're saying. So test everything you do.
All right, number 7.
Fix that typo. Now, again, I realize this is a perfectionist thing, but I think anything you do, you should do it as best you can.
Right. And it sounds like a minor thing. Where this rings true for me is you'll be we'll put like worship lyrics up on the screen, and when there's a typo in the worship lyrics, it just stands out like a sore thumb.
I think it does. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're singing the right words, but or they misspelled something.
Right.
They put I don't know. They had the wrong there tense there
exactly.
or something.
Here's one I can tell you, and this goes back to my days when I was with you guys at your church. There was a song, the Lord is my refuge and my strength. And the word refuge, R-E-F-U-G-E, right? But we would always, somehow or another, we would fix it, but it would come back as R-E-F-U-S-E.
Yeah. The Lord is my refuse.
and we would fix it, and then the next week or the next time we did the song, it would be back to the wrong word. The Lord is my garbage or whatever, that refuse means, and not instead of refuge, And again, it's just, they're little things. And, I don't think you need to freak out over them, but you need to fix them.
When they're up on the big screen, they take on a new...
Yeah, everybody can see it, and it's just one of those things that it's best to do, So how do you fix that? Have somebody else look at your work.
Right.
It's the best thing to do.
And this next one kind of ties into that as well, which is the slide issues, and that can be grammar, that can be typos, that can be technical issues about slides not advancing or being out of order or whatever. So it's really important to have things work.
Look these things over. And with slides and images you're putting up, it could be too light, could be too dark maybe. I mean, it might look good on maybe your computer, but when you project it, it's going to look different maybe on the big screen. Pictures get blurry because the resolution's too low. Looked okay on my phone, but didn't look good on the big screens. Well, again, you want to look at all these things in advance, test them, and really kind of stay on top of that. Because I actually like multimedia stuff. I think it adds to the presentation, but it certainly doesn't add when you constantly have goofball mistakes. And again, it happens. It's going to happen once in a while. So the idea is to try to minimize it.
Another thing to look out for, and I worked for a guy for several years that was colorblind. So not being colorblind, you don't realize what they can and cannot distinguish. And so you want to keep that in mind if you're trying to, highlight the reds from the yellows or whatever it may be.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we're going through this presentation here. We're talking about common multimedia presentation mistakes. We've talked about notification interruptions on your computer that everybody can see. You need to clear your desktop so that it looks neat in case everything crashes and all they see is your desktop on the screens. Make sure your movie clips are what you want them to be without any bad words in them, and they say exactly what you want them to say. They communicate what you want them to communicate, nothing else, nothing more. Print your slides out in case something goes wrong. Test your video was number 5. Test everything else. Fix the typo, slide issues. And number 9 is
back it up.
Back it up.
Yes. Yeah. So it's important that you have that you're not going right before the presentation and the file melts down or you lost it or
boot up the computer and it ain't there.
Right.
And now you're standing in front of everybody and you're fumbling around trying to figure out what's going on. And, it happens, but again, if you've got it backed up somewhere, you can usually recover it. One of the things, and I don't do this.
Yeah, the other thing, and maybe I was jumping to conclusions with this particular topic, is you also want to address the audience rather than, you ever been to those presentations where the presenter is looking at the screen?
Right.
So you don't want to look at their backside the whole time. So the way around that is you put your presentation on the back screen. Right? We do that at our church too for the so you can look out at the audience and see what they're seeing that's behind you, or
it's in the back of the sanctuary.
It's in the back of the sanctuary, up in a high wall that everyone's facing one way, so they're not going to see it. Yeah. Right? Or you stick it on a video monitor down low. Right. That's where all the the big keynotes are done. They all have their stuff that's so you're not turning around and looking at the screen.
Right. You're and I was working at your church for a long time, and you guys have a really big stage, and where I'm at now we don't do any of that, but when I was there and I would speak, we had a little stand where you could put the way we did it was we had a big screen TV on the stage that we stood beside.
Right.
And then we also ran the presentation. It went to that TV, so it ran off the computer. We would bring our own laptop in. We would sit the laptop down towards the foot of the stage. It had a little stand on it, and then we plugged the laptop into the TV.
Right.
And then we used a little remote, and we would operate off our laptop, and it would send everything to the TV.
So you'd be able to look down
you could look down at your own notes, if you wanted to, and that's kind of what I did. But I also always had I brought 8.5 by 11 sheets with me, because if something crashed, I could at least look at my notes occasionally and stay on track. But so I really kind of like that presentation, the way Jeff set that up, because the laptop was kind of, I could look down at it, but the stage was elevated, so it wasn't as obvious.
Right.
And I would still look down. I could see people down there, and I could look up, and I really liked it. But getting back to the point here, back up everything, so that if things crash, you can either easily recover it, or, like I said, in my case, I just had hard copies on paper, and maybe I didn't have the slides or didn't have everything if it crashed, but at least I would have something, and I wouldn't look like a total loser.
All right. So our last one on number 10 on our problems to avoid with presentations.
I think this is probably one of the most important things. Don't freak out. Now, in other words, if things go wrong, and you know what, something weird is going to happen. It could be anything. It could be with the equipment. It could be screaming babies, or people rolling around the aisle coughing. I don't know, but the best thing to do is keep your composure. And if things go wrong with it, especially with the tech, and I've seen guys yell at the tech people because something didn't work, and all that
during
does,
their presentation,
it just creates tension in the whole room.
Right.
And look, I understand this is your presentation, and you've worked hard on it, and you want it to look good, but things do go wrong. And if you can do these other 9 things that we just talked about, that will eliminate a lot of possibilities. But still,
something goes wrong, don't freak out. Don't bite the guy's head off.
Yeah.
Because that's not the message you're wanting to send.
Well, exactly. And when you're freaking out at people, or you could maybe you just get upset with yourself, but it just puts everybody on edge, and it just messes up the whole presentation. And so, it's best not to do that. And if you've got somebody that's running your stuff and they constantly make mistakes, well, guess what? You probably need to find a different place in ministry for those people, or that person.
Right.
If they can't do something right with the PowerPoint
but things will happen to the best of them. So
they do happen. But I'm saying if you're saying, well, Phil, you don't understand. This happens all the time, and I'm tired of it. And okay, if you're tired of it and you need to make a change, it
happens all the time. Then you've
got to make a change. If it's user error and the user is somebody else, it's out of your control, and you've done everything else that you could, then maybe somebody else. As one of my general managers in radio used to say, well, it looks like the Lord's moving you on. and that would be good. And so, but yeah, I mean, you've got to do your best to keep it light. And I've been in situations where I made jokes about it, and my blood pressure was high, but I did my best to make jokes about it, and everybody laughed. And then afterwards, I was like, this cannot happen again.
Stay calm and carry on. Huh?
Yeah, you just gotta, and you gotta give people grace because people do make mistakes. So, yeah. So anyhow, you can't talk the talk unless you're willing to walk the walk, and sometimes you just gotta exercise patience. But I still think that presentations using multimedia is a great way to go. I think movie clips can be awesome. I think music presentations, whatever you've got, I think it's a great way to do that. And I think tech can work to your advantage in your church. And especially today with everything is so much more less expensive.
Yes.
There you have it. All right, so we is done.
All right, we are done.
Let's if you want to give us some feedback on this, maybe you disagree with what we're saying, or maybe you've got something to add to it, we would love to hear from you. Just send us an email, support@streamingchurch.tv. That's one of our domains because we do streaming video. Streamingchurch.tv, support@streamingchurch.tv. And if we can help you in any way with tech stuff, streaming video, mobile apps, we will certainly do that because we love helping churches. That's what we do. We've been doing it for many, many years, and that's why we do what we do here. So, all right. So, we will catch you again next week. For Steve Lacey, my name is Phil Thompson. We hope that you have a great day, and we'll catch you on another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast next time. Take care.